London taxis all look the same at night. A blur of headlights, a yellow sign, a door that feels like escape. For a desperate man, that was enough. Our veteran was no exception. But he wasn't the kind of veteran you salute. No, he was a veteran of theft. His campaigns weren't fought on foreign soil but in vaults and back alleys. His medals, police mugshots. His code of honor, whatever got him out alive. And tonight he thought he'd pulled off his masterpiece, millions lifted from one of the most secure banks in London. Adrenaline still pounding, he spotted a cab, slid into the back seat, and thought he'd just outsmarted the whole city. But fate has a dark sense of humor. Out of every cab in London, he picked the one steered by a retired Navy man. Not just any man, Jason Statham. And when the gun came out, Jason didn't blink. He just smirked in the rear view and said the sentence that froze him cold. "You're the wanted thief. If you've got a few minutes, I'll tell you why the days of a thief are always numbered, and why this one ended in the back of a taxi." Doyle, that was his name. Not his real one, of course. He'd gone by so many that even he sometimes forgot which was on the latest warrant. Doyle was his thief's name. Short, sharp, easy to remember when you're yelling it over a radio in the middle of a job. And Doyle wasn't some pickpocket swiping wallets on the tube. He was a craftsman, a professional. If crime were a trade, he'd be a master builder. His resume: half a dozen jewelry stores cleaned out, a handful of armored vans cracked open, one casino vault job that people still argued about over pints. He called himself experienced. The cops called him incorrigible. The tabloids. They called him London's last gentleman thief, though anyone who'd met Doyle knew there wasn't much gentleman about him. He was proud of it. Veteran fit him like a glove. Decades of training, just not the kind you brag about at family dinners. And tonight, Doyle thought he'd written his name in history. The target, Whitestone Bank. Old, fortified, the kind of institution that dripped arrogance and smelled like old money. People used to joke you could leave a gold bar on the counter and it would still be there 100 years later. Doyle had other plans. He and his crew had studied it for months. Routines, shift changes, security codes. He wasn't reckless. That was the thing people never understood. To them he was chaos, a loose cannon with a gun and a mask. But the truth? Doyle was methodical. He didn't rely on luck. He relied on obsession. Still, every plan has its cracks. That night Doyle and his men slipped in like shadows. Timing perfect, security blind spots exploited, cameras looped. The vault opened smoother than butter on warm toast. When he laid eyes on the stacks of cash, Doyle swore he felt younger. Like all those years hadn't dulled him, hadn't taken away his edge. They stuffed the duffels until the seams groaned. Everything was going to plan. Until one guard didn't. Maybe he came back early from a smoke break. Maybe he heard something he shouldn't have. Whatever the reason, Doyle had to improvise. The guard saw the mask, saw the bag, and before Doyle could talk him down, the man's hand went for his radio. Bang! The shot echoed through the vault like thunder. The guard dropped. Doyle froze for just a second, long enough to feel that cold shiver crawl up his spine. He hadn't fired in years, didn't like to, but tonight wasn't about liking. Tonight was about surviving. The crew panicked, but Doyle barked them back into motion. "Move," he snarled, voice iron. They grabbed the bags, bolted, and vanished into the London night before the sirens could find their rhythm. But Doyle knew what that shot meant. The plan wasn't clean anymore. The guard might live, he might not. Either way, the police weren't going to chalk this up as a clever break-in. This was blood now, and blood meant heat. That's why Doyle found himself alone, duffel slung across his chest, boots splashing through rain-slick streets. The crew scattered, each man for himself. That was the unspoken rule. If you were caught alone. No loyalty in this business beyond the split. London pulsed around him, neon bleeding into puddles, sirens wailing somewhere in the distance. Doyle ducked down alleys, slid through side streets, heart racing, lungs burning. He knew he had minutes, maybe less, before the city locked down. Then he saw it. A black cab, engine idling, light glowing. The kind of sight that feels like salvation when you're drowning. Doyle didn't think, didn't hesitate. He yanked the door open, threw himself inside, and slammed it shut behind him. "Drive," he barked, voice sharp, breath ragged. "Anywhere but here." The driver didn't answer right away. Just shifted into gear, pulled smoothly into the flow of traffic and steered them away from the chaos. Doyle let out a long breath, pressing back into the seat. For the first time in an hour, he thought maybe, just maybe, he'd made it. The duffel sat on his lap, fat with money. He brushed rain from his face and allowed himself a grin. Whitestone Bank, millions, a guard down, sure, but Doyle had seen worse. He'd live. He always lived. Then his eyes drifted to the driver. Something was off. Not the hands, though they were steady, scarred, too disciplined for a man who spent his nights ferrying drunks. Not the shoulders, broad, squared, posture perfect. No, it was the silence. The driver didn't hum, didn't sigh, didn't curse at the traffic. Just drove. Smooth, controlled, like he'd done this before. Like he'd done everything before. Doyle felt the prickle crawl up his neck. His hand drifted inside his coat, brushing the pistol's grip, just in case. "Where to?" the driver asked at last, voice calm, too calm. Doyle rattled off an address, out of the city, far away, a safe house only he knew. The driver nodded once. No questions, no small talk, just eyes meeting his in the rearview mirror, sharp, steady, unblinking. Doyle shifted again. Something wasn't right. He pulled the pistol free, the metal glinting under the streetlights. "Eyes on the road," Doyle growled. "You just keep driving, yeah." The driver didn't flinch, didn't even glance at the weapon. Instead, he smirked, just a faint curl of the lip in the mirror. And with a voice so calm it chilled the air, he said the words that made Doyle's blood run cold. "You're the wanted thief." The cab went quiet after Jason's words. Not city quiet. London still roared outside, sirens screaming somewhere in the distance, horns blaring, rain hissing on the windshield. No, this was the kind of quiet that pressed in from the inside. The kind that makes every sound outside feel like it's happening on another planet. Doyle froze. The gun was still in his hand, steady enough, but the rest of him was. His jaw clenched, his breath shallow, his pulse hammering in his ears. "What did you say?" he snapped, his voice harder than he felt. Jason didn't blink. His eyes in the mirror were steady, calm, cold as steel. "I said you're the wanted thief." The way he said it, it wasn't a guess. It wasn't a question. It was fact delivered flat like the weather. Doyle swallowed. "You don't know who I am," Doyle hissed. Jason's smirk widened by a fraction. "London's been talking about you all night. Whitestone Bank, millions gone, sirens everywhere. And then you step into my cab with a bag bigger than my boot space. It doesn't take Sherlock, mate." Doyle's stomach turned. He should have ditched the bag, should have melted into the streets. But no, he thought he was clever, thought he was lucky. Instead, he'd walked into the one taxi in the city driven by a man who looked at him like prey. "You don't understand," Doyle muttered, trying to steady his voice. "I've been doing this longer than you've been driving. I know how this game works. You keep your mouth shut, you get paid, and we both walk away happy." Jason chuckled. Not loud, not cruel, just enough to cut Doyle off. "Happy? You think this ends with you happy? You're a veteran, all right, but not the kind anyone respects. You're not getting medals, you're getting headlines, and not the kind you can frame." Doyle bristled, tightening his grip on the pistol. "Don't play games with me. You don't know what I've done, what I've survived. I've outsmarted cops, guards, banks, crews that would have slit me ear to ear, and I'm still here." Jason's eyes didn't leave his in the mirror. "Yeah, but look where you are. Sitting in the back of my cab, gun shaking in your hand, hoping luck will save you one more time. Tell me, Doyle, how's that working out?" The name hit Doyle like a slap. He hadn't said it, not once, not tonight, yet somehow Jason knew. His stomach knotted. His mouth went dry. He tried to mask it with bravado. "You think you're clever, don't you?" Jason's smirk turned into something colder. "No, I think I'm right, and I think you're finished." The cab glided through London streets, the rain streaking across the windows like tears. Every turn felt deliberate. Doyle's eyes darted to the road, then back to Jason, then to the duffel on his lap. His empire, his masterpiece, his proof that he still mattered, all crammed into a bag that felt heavier by the second. "You're gonna keep driving," Doyle growled. "Out of the city, somewhere quiet, and if you make it easy, maybe you live to see the morning." Jason tilted his head, amused. "You ever wonder why veterans like me never get rattled by guns in their face?" Doyle said nothing, his throat tight. "Because I've had worse. I've stared down barrels held by men who didn't flinch, Men who didn't need to tell themselves they were in control. You're shaking. I can see it from here. Doyle cursed under his breath, trying to steady his grip. He hated how true it was. His hand was trembling. Not enough to spoil a shot, maybe, but enough to show the crack in his armor. Jason pressed on. You think tonight's your masterpiece, but all I see is a tired thief who doesn't know when the curtain's already dropped. The words stung. Doyle had built his whole life around being the one who got away, the survivor, the veteran, and now this driver, this stranger, was peeling him apart with nothing but words. He snapped, "Shut up and drive." Jason didn't even raise his voice. "I am driving. The question is, Doyle, where do you think we're headed?" Doyle froze again. His eyes flicked to the street signs, the buildings sliding past. They weren't heading toward the safe house. They weren't even leaving the city. "Where are we going?" Doyle barked. Jason's smirk didn't waver. "Someplace you should have been a long time ago." Doyle's stomach lurched. Panic clawed at him. He thought about pulling the trigger right there, ending it, forcing the wheel, forcing the night back into his control. But something about Jason's calm froze him. The man didn't read like a cabbie. Didn't even read like a civilian. He read like someone who'd stared down worse than Doyle and come out the other side unblinking. And that scared him more than sirens ever could. The minutes stretched. The rain kept falling. Doyle's breath came shallow, uneven. His mind raced, replaying every mistake, every shortcut, every job where luck violated him out at the last second. Tonight wasn't supposed to be different. Tonight was supposed to be proof he still had it. Instead, he was sitting in a cab, watching the city close in, listening to Jasonstatham dismantle him one sentence at a time. "You know what your problem is, Doyle," Jason finally said, eyes flicking back to the mirror. "You mistake surviving for winning, but surviving isn't living. It's just waiting for the end. And tonight, you've run out of road." Doyle's chest tightened. He tried to answer, to spit back something sharp, but the words stuck in his throat. The cab slowed. Blue lights flickered ahead. Roadblock. Doyle's heart slammed against his ribs. "No, no, no," he muttered, clutching the duffel tighter, the gun trembling now. Jason's smirk became something colder. "End of the line." And with that, the cab rolled to a stop.